Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I'm sure we're wondering what is in this box. Well, let me tell you the story. We got an email on our YouTube channel a while back from a company called Bestarc. In China, they make welding machines and plasma cutters. And there was some confusion talking with them, but essentially they want to know if they sent me a machine, if I would demonstrate it and sort of review it on our channel. And my first thought was, well, sure, who doesn't want to open a new box with tools in it? I got back to them and I said, look, if you send me something, sure, that's fine. I'll put it on my YouTube channel, but I'm going to give it an honest review. And that was my terms. And here it is. But along the way, it started out, it was going to be a welding machine. And then they didn't have any more at the time or something. And then it was going to be a plasma cutter. And then I lost touch with them for like a month. And then this thing just showed up out of the blue. And so we literally do not know what's in there, and we're super excited to open it up and see what's going on.
Surprise!
So let's see what's in here.
Hurry, hurry, I'm excited. Box in a box.
Okay, so let's have a look here. The company is Bestarc. And again, they're a Chinese manufacturer of welding machines and plasma cutters. This is a plasma cutter. It's a model BTC 500DP, and they call it the 7th generation. And it runs on 110 and 220 volt. So the plasma cutter, this is a list of the contents. The plasma cutter, AG60P cutting torch, ground clamp with cable, 2 tips, 2 electrodes, air hose, wire adapter, that's from the 110 to the 220, and a couple hose clamps. So it's a 50 amp pilot arc plasma cutter, 60% duty cycle, runs on 110, 120, or 110 and 220. It's 50 to 60 hertz frequency. It's got an LED screen display, synergetic control, built-in air pressure regulator and filter, pilot arc PA and post time PT adjustment, and a 2T and 4T torch trigger control. The latest IGBT inverter technology. I looked that up online. Basically what that does is it takes the incoming power and turns it into a safer power for the digital screen and that sort of thing. It's just a cleaner, higher quality power. It says safe torch connection. I'm not entirely sure exactly what that means. High quality cutting torch with cable, industrial application, quality air regulator with preset air pressure, suitable to cut all electrically conductive materials, lightweight and compact, strong metal housing. And now let's see what it says on the end here. Rated output current is between 15 and 50 amps. Cutting thickness of 12 millimeters, or approximately ½ inch. Duty cycle 60%. Insulation class F. I believe this would say electric power phase single. It's about all that makes sense. Air pressure 40 psi. Weight 9.6 kilograms. And then it gives the package size. And we don't really care what the packing size is. We'll share later what the actual machine dimensions are with you guys.
Okay, what about the caution? Read the caution.
Oh yes. Put the guard on, read the instructions. You know the drill. So let's get this thing open.
I do like that packaging. That plastic idea is nice.
Yeah, definitely gives it more protection than without. Come look at this. It does have, like, this was on here. And then foam on all these sides. Guessing this is some of the cables and so on. And there's the machine.
Well, that's a unique color, that's for sure. Did you break it already?
The plastic popped off. Oh no. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out. It's fine. That's fine.
It's fine.
So it's in our box here. Some airline, I believe. Teflon tape. Some spare nozzles, electrodes. Ground. And then the torch itself. And an adapter, so you can be 230 volt or 115.
You're forgetting something.
Instruction manual.
The instructions. Don't forget the instructions. Do you have to say something about the colors?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good looking unit, really.
It is.
We're going to try this guy out with 110 voltage first, and then and see how that goes. And then we'll work our way up to the 220 volt. But for now, we're starting with 110. And I'm going to plug my air into it here at the back. And then I'm going to turn it on. Let's go have a look at the dashboard. So it tells us, it knows we're plugged into 110 volt. It's showing 60 PSI, which is fine. It's currently set at 25 amps. I think we're probably going to start it at 20 and see what it'll do. I have read the manual and I do know what they're suggesting it's capable of. So we're going to try it out, but we're going to stay within those parameters. The 2T and 4T, basically 2T is you pull the trigger and it comes on, you release the trigger, it goes off. When you have it on 4T, you can pull the trigger once and then let go of it and it just stays on for however long until you hit the trigger again. Not what I'm used to. I'm going to stick with this 2T. And then there's pre-air and post-airflow to keep your tips and nozzle cool. And you can adjust the time. This is the post-flow here. I've got it at 5 seconds. And then the pre-flow, also, I can put whatever I want up to 15 seconds. But I've also got that at 5 seconds for now. This is the regulator control knob here where you can increase and decrease the air pressure coming out of the machine. Ground clamp, the power supply to the torch head, the brains to the torch head, and then the airflow to the torch head. The torches, it feels nice in the hand, I would say. It's quite, it's a comfortable thing. It's got a safety shield on the trigger. And then, of course, when you're ready to pull the trigger, you get under this and you're good to go. There's a chart on here that tells you, depending on what voltage you're plugged into, what thickness you should be able to cut at how many amps. And so this starts off at 5/32 of an inch cutting width. Now this chart is kind of under the handle. It might be challenging to get here. Anyways, it's telling me at 110 volts I can cut 5/32 plate at 25 amps. Now, I don't happen to have 5/32 plate, but I have some 12 gauge. And we're going to try that at 20 amps and see what happens. And so I've collected it. Well, again, back to the chart, it's saying it'll cut up to 1/4 inch on 110 volt. Now that would be at 35 amps. And so we'll try the 20, see how that goes, maybe 25, 30 amps. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see just how it goes. We'll see how it likes it, and then we'll switch over to 220 volt, and we'll go with some thicker things. So I've gathered up some scraps here. I've got some 12 gauge. I've got some, which is around 1/8 of an inch, a little under 1/8 of an inch. I've got some 3/16, some 1/4, some 3/8, and some 1/2. And I've also got a straight edge here because I could not freehand my way out of a wet paper bag. So we're going to start out slow and easy, and we're going to work our way up.
Let's get cutting.
So I think we're all set here. We're set at 20 amps. We've got the air hooked up. Hook up the ground. I've got some 12 gauge, and I've got a straight edge on there, so I should be able to cut a halfway's decent line with that. Let's see what happens. So yeah, at 20 amps, that cut that 12 gauge, no problem at all. That's pretty much a standard amount of draught hanging off there. There's nothing surprising me there at all. I'm going to take another lick off of that at 25 amps just to see if there's any difference, and because I'm curious, I want to know. So again, 12 gauge at 25 amps. We're going to see what happens. That actually cut a lot cleaner. I think I would prefer the way it cut at 25 amps over 20 amps. So the chart skips right over 3/16, but what I want to do, I want to try taking a cut off of the 3/16 material at the 25 amp mark and see what happens. So here we go, 3/16 plate at 25 amps. Well, so we blew the breaker. So I think my setup here, we're not going to be able to do a lot of cutting at something as thick as 3/16. It's possible that breaker's a little weak. I'm not really sure, but for me, it did not want to make a cut through about 3.5 inches of 3/16 plate. So I do have an outlet that puts out 20 amps instead of the regular 15, and we can try that one out and see if it wants to make a cut. So still set the machine at 25 amps, still got a piece of 3/16 plate in there. Now running the machine off of a 20 amp circuit instead of the 15 amp circuit that I was on before. So let's see what happens. That cut that no problem, nice and clean. So let's move up to some 1/4 inch plate. And I think, I mean, we're at 25 amps now. I don't know what I can get away with on this 20 amp, 110 volt circuit, but I'm curious. So I want to see, can we cut the 1/4 inch on 110 volt? I'm going to bump the amps up to 30 now. The highest the gauge goes at 110 volt is 35, but making baby steps here. Let's see what happens at 30 amps if it wants to cut through the 1/4. Okay, it appears as though I've lost air pressure. This didn't cut all the way through, but I suspect it would have. I'm going to find out what's going on with our air pressure here. This was making noise earlier when we were trying to film, so I unplugged it. So that wasn't really a fair test. Let's get our air pressure back. Try it again, 30 amps, 1/4 inch material. Okay, compressor's on. Pretty important step.
Plugged in.
It's plugged in. Still at 30 amps, still in the 1/4 inch plate. Now, we know we were low on air, and the machine didn't seem to struggle any with its electrical. It seemed to be an air problem. And we didn't pop the 20 amp breaker, so I suspect we're going to make a nice pass here this time around. So that did work fine. The piece I was cutting fell cleanly off. I think I would call that a success. I'm not sure if we can get away with 35 amps or not. Let's try it out. Well, it's an experiment to see if our 20 amp breaker can handle the machine being set at 35 amps or not. And I felt that it was maybe struggling a little during that last cut just to keep going. And so we'll see what happens. So the machine handled the 1/4 inch no problem. And my breaker handled the 35 amps that it's set at, no problem. Now the chart does say that you can cut up to 5/16 with 110 volt. Now unfortunately I don't have any, and I mean, judging by the way it cut this, I'd say yeah, it probably would cut the 5/16. You might have to slow your rate of travel down a bit to do that, but I think what I want to do, I have some 3/8, which is just over 5/16. So the 1/4 is a 1/16 under 5/16. The 3/8 is a 1/16 over 5/16. So it's not supposed to be able to cut this at 110 volt, but let's see if it does. Because if it'll cut this, then guaranteed it'll cut the 5/16. My gut tells me based on the 1/4 that it will cut 5/16, but I just want to see with my own eyes. So 20 amp breaker, 35 amps set on the machine, and 3/8 plate. This, and again, don't forget, this is thicker than this machine is meant to cut at 110 volts. Let's see what happens. we blew the breaker. So that was more than my 20 amp breaker could handle. It was actually cutting it pretty well. If you come over here, you can see light all the way through there for the most part. So I mean, it was doing it, but it couldn't keep it up for long. All right, so we're moving on to the 220 volt, and we're gonna see how that goes. And I suspect it's going to go an awful lot smoother. Guess I'll set up a fresh cut here. Just gotta grind a little bit of that draught off of there so it doesn't hook me up while I'm trying to make the pass. This is interesting. This is a $9 grinder that's nearing the end of its life. All right, gonna fire it up on 220 volts here. Of course, it knows that it's got 220 power supply. I'm gonna check my air, make sure that while the air is flowing, I'm up around the 50 PSI mark. Pretty good. So it says 45 amps for 5/16, 55 amps for half. So I'm gonna go 50 amps. We'll see what that does. So 220 volt, 50 amps, 3/8 plate. Let's see what happens. So it cut that like a champ. Nice clean cut. No problem there at all. Now, interesting observation here is the machine, as it's stated on the box, goes up to 50 amps. Now this label here, under 220 volts, it just keeps on going. And what it's telling us here is you could do 1/2 inch at 55 amps, 9/16 at 65 amps, 5/8 at 75 amps, 3/4 at 85 amps. So this must be a universal chart that they'll put even on much bigger machines. But it cut that 3/8 like no problem at all. I do have a chunk of 1/2 inch scrap I've pulled out. So we're gonna see what it'll do with the 1/2 inch, even though in theory here, it's really not rated to cut all the way up to 1/2 inch. So here we go, 1/2 inch plate, 220 volt, machine is still maxed at 50 amps. Now, according to the box, the machine should cut 1/2 inch. According to the chart, it shouldn't. Let's see what happens.
Impressive.
Cut the 1/2 inch like a champ, and the electrical breaker took it, no problem. So that's it for our testing. We're not going to try anything thicker because I'm pretty darn sure that's its maximum thickness. I mean, they don't claim it'll do any more than that, so that's where we're stopping our testing at. But what we are going to do is we've been collecting our likes and dislikes, and we're going to share those with you now. So recapping. I told you guys going into this, I was going to be honest. I told the people at Bestarc that I was going to give an honest review, and so that's what you're going to get. I will say, overall, I'm super impressed with all of it, right from the beginning. It was super well packaged, came out of the box, nice and safe, not a mark on it. I feel you could really ship this thing to some crazy places and it would arrive there in one piece. It also did everything that the box said it would do, which is nice. I mean, you expect that, but you don't get that every day. So that's nice, that's a plus. I mean, who is this thing for? Am I suggesting that you strap this to the back of your Vespa and head off into the sunset and start an industrial plasma cutting company? I'm not suggesting that, and I don't think the people at Bestarc are suggesting that. I think a machine like this is really meant for someone like me, a novice to intermediate level person doing metalworking with welding and plasma cutting equipment. I mean, this thing's going to do what your average hobbyist needs. It's not too often you really need to cut something more than 1/2 inch thick. Generally has just a feel of quality to it. I mean, I haven't found anything that was crooked or mismatched or loose. I mean, it really does seem to be put together quite well, I feel. It was easy to understand. I mean, I did have to read the manual to understand what some of the special features are. But I mean, all of that is in 1/2 a page in the manual. It took me no time at all to become perfectly familiar with this thing. So it was really easy to start using. Tanya likes the pretty color and the pretty lights.
I do. I love the color and the lights.
That's important in a man's workshop.
Yep.
And overall, the fit and finish, I think I might have said that, but it really is tight, near as I can tell.
Super lightweight.
It is quite lightweight, 9.8 kilograms, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 pounds-ish, I think. This lists on Amazon Canada for $399.99, and in US dollars, that's, well, let's see, divide by 10, multiply times pi, $24.73, I believe, American, and I don't know what it is in metric, sorry guys. It is, the consumables for it are readily available, which is super nice. There's nothing worse than buying something and you know, your ability to replace the consumables disappears overnight. So that's also a good feature. I really don't have any serious dislikes. Now, it did claim to be able to cut up to 5/16 on 110 volt. They did not specify at what amps. I started it with a standard household 15 amp breaker, and we only really were successful on the 12 gauge. It cut the 3/16, but not for long. Now, I'm not making excuses for them. I work my breakers awfully hard in this shop, and it's possible that that breaker's a little on the weak side. I mean, it's been popped before, goodness knows. So I'm not saying that it is incapable of doing what it says at the 110 volt. Again, they don't specify was that 15 amps or not. Once we got it up to the 20 amp circuit, it did a lot better. And of course, once we were on the 220 volt, it was, you know, pretty much unstoppable. It just roared through that half inch, no problem. And I think most people, you know, especially if you are towards the intermediate level welder, fabricator, hobbyist, you're going to have 220 amp in your shop. It's not a huge deal. Even if you have to have an electrician come install it, it's not more than a few $100 to get that done. And so, thanks a lot to the people at Bestarc. This machine is going to fit into my little shop perfectly. I'm going to use this thing all the time, and I think it's going to treat me well. Now, we will come back over time and after having used it more, and if anything pops up that's worth discussing, we'll talk that through. Maybe we'll give it a 6-month or a 1-year review and see what we think then. But for first time new owner of this machine, I'm super happy with what I see. I did not pay for this. This was sent to me for free. The deal was I would review it on my channel. And so I've held up my end of the bargain, and I feel really fortunate to have this little guy as part of my team here. So I guess in conclusion, I can, you know, with perfect honesty, I can recommend the Bestarc brand to you guys. I don't see anything here I don't like, and I don't see any reason why anyone should not consider picking one of these up if they're looking for an affordable plasma cutter. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments and I can answer them there. Or if you want to email longer questions, that's fine too. I try and answer every question and every comment that's not ignorant. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Bestarc.
Bye for now.